This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with My Lowe's Rewards. Earn points towards My Lowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
He passed away. Now, here's a kind of a weird thing about that. I had said that I found out his results on a Thursday, and I talked to him on that Saturday, and that date was November 6th, 2016. He died on November 8th of 2020, but the last time I spoke to him was November 6th. So the first time I ever talked to him and the last time I ever talked to him was on the same day, 4 years apart.
Welcome to DNA Surprises, a podcast that delves into the world of unexpected DNA discoveries. I'm your host, Alexis Auersalt. In July 2021, my life took a surprising turn when I found out that I'm an NPE, a person who has experienced a non-paternal event. In other words, my biological father isn't who I thought he was. Join me as we explore the stories of NPEs, adoptees, and donor-conceived people and their families. Get ready to unravel the astonishing journeys that begin with a simple DNA test. This is DNA Surprises. Many people in the DNA Surprise community grew up with dads or birth certificate fathers, BCFs as they're often called. We are raised by these men, and then one day, through a DNA test or other means, we learn that they are not our biological fathers. But what if you never really felt like you had a dad? How does a DNA surprise affect you? In this week's episode, Alissa shares how her free-spirited mother had her and her twin brother on her own before marrying their stepfather. Alissa remembers asking questions. Do we have a dad? And getting the same explanation each time. He lived in another state. He had gone to prison. They'd tried to make it work, but did not. In her early 20s, Alissa attempted to build a relationship with who she believed was her biological father, Jim, even finding an uncle dad through his brother Rick. After taking a DNA test, everything she thought she knew was upended. Thank you for sharing your story, Alissa.
My name is Alissa, and I'm 52. I'll be 53 in August, and I'm from Portland, Maine. I grew up with a single mom and a twin brother. She grew up in Maine, but when she was in her 20s, she would go down to Florida. She'd go in the wintertime, and she'd work jobs in the wintertime, and she'd come back to Maine. And she did this for about 5 or 6 years. Then she got pregnant, and she came back to Maine for good to have the baby. Unmarried. I don't really know the backstory, but I just know that her boyfriend, who she said was our dad, was in prison when we were born. And he was from Wisconsin, so he was back in Wisconsin. So now she's back in Maine. She gave birth to us. The twins was a surprise. I think she knew just a couple months before she had us that she was having twins, so she had boy and girl twins. I remember my young childhood not having a dad around, no big deal. You know, that's just what we knew. But I remember I was always the one asking, do we have a dad? Who's our dad? She always told us the same thing. She would tell us his name, how old he was, where he was from, and a little bit about him. And that was always consistent, what she would say. And I never met him. She said that he had come to Portland. They gave it a try after he was released from prison, and he came to Portland to see if they could work it out, and it didn't last long, so he left.
Did you want to have a relationship with him, or were you curious to have like that relationship?
Yeah, I was always very curious growing up, but that was in the 80s, so I didn't know there was nothing we could do or that I could do, and she had no information. I knew his birthday, and my brother, he couldn't care less. He didn't ask anything. He just had his opinion, his own opinion about the situation, and I never remember him asking at all. I was always the one asking about him. She got married when we were 7, so we did have a stepdad, but not, wasn't like we thought he was our dad or anything. He just was our stepdad. He did adopt us. Although that's another side story. He thought he adopted us, but she kind of pulled the wool over his eyes, and it wasn't legal. So
okay, so he thought he had legally adopted you, and in reality, your birth certificate did not change. There was nothing official.
No.
Okay.
No.
Wow.
But he kind of thought it was what it actually was just a name change, basically. But she told him, "Oh, I got the papers, and, I went to court, and they're yours now," kind of thing. And he just, "Oh, okay." So he thought he adopted us.
Wow. And what was your relationship like with him?
It was fine. It wasn't like, "Oh, this is my dad." We called him dad because we didn't have a dad. So that was okay with that. That felt natural to us. But he was a nice person, and he provided. And so fast forward through childhood, when I was 21, that would have been in 1992, I had something happen in my personal life that I had my heart broken and all this. So I decided I was going to leave Maine. So I myself ended up in Florida from 92 to 97. But early on when I was there, once I was out of my mom's house, I thought, I want to find him. I'd like to know who he is, see if I could find him. I didn't expect much. I just wanted to see what he looked like, things like that. So the place I was working at, there was this guy that worked there that also worked at the police station. I was talking to him about it. He said, "Well, do you know his birthday?" I said, "Yes," and gave him what little information I had. He actually came back and said, "I found him." So I wrote him a letter. I left my phone number on the letter, and I don't know, a couple weeks later, he actually called me. And he was really excited, and we corresponded, and then we ended up meeting. At that time, he actually was living in Florida. He was a truck driver, but he was actually living in Florida. So my spouse at the time, we made a plan and we went to meet him. So we ended up having a fairly good relationship for a couple years. I had my first son in 1996, and in 1997, I came back to Maine. He had already at that time moved around. He was a truck driver and married, and they moved to another state. So my son was 1, but when I got to Maine, he stopped really corresponding with me, which was weird.
What was your feeling like when you met him? And I know hindsight's 2020, right? But when you met him, did you feel like, this is my dad? Did you feel connected with him?
I did. I really did. He was so nice. He was so handsome. My mom had always said, "Oh, he was gorgeous. He was so good looking. He looked like Superman, like Christopher Reeve." And he really did. And I was like, "Okay, Mom, I see, I see what you're..." And, so I really liked him, and I thought everything was fine. He had a not great relationship with his family. So I didn't meet anybody else, except I did meet his mother once. And then he actually ended up meeting my brother. My brother took a little bit to come around. His name was Jim, the truck driver. He actually met my brother before I met him. So we both had a little bit of a relationship with him. But like I said, when I came to Maine to live, he just stopped having a relationship with me. So I just let it go. I wasn't going to force anything. So that would have been, like I said, 1997. Fast forward many years, all these years go by, and I never really reconnected with him, but I actually connected with his brother. His brother Rick was a totally different person, kind of different personality. He scooped us up with open arms. Oh, my niece and my nephew, and this was Uncle Rick. So we had this great relationship with Uncle Rick, and this would have been in about 2013. Somewhere along there, I took the DNA test because I was really big in genealogy. I had done my mom's genealogy. I did Jim's genealogy. I had everything. I knew where the countries that their ancestors were from and everything. Pretty much, I just was curious to see what the DNA test would show as far as ethnicity, like how much German, how much Irish, and pretty much thinking it was going to be all English, German, Irish, maybe Scottish. Well, the DNA test came back and it showed that I was half Italian. And that did not jive at all with anything that I knew. I had a coworker at the time that also was very big in genealogy and DNA, and so I showed it to him. He's like, "You're half Italian." Like this, because I thought, well, maybe, the migration of people and, trying to rationalize how it could show that I was Italian.
Right? We do that. The gymnastics, right? Every time we start going, okay, trying to make it make sense, right?
Yeah, trying to make it make sense. And it just was like, no, you are half Italian. Like, this pretty much says that one of your parents has to be full Italian, and your mom's not. It's like, no, she's not. So I was confused, and I told Uncle Rick about this, and I even said to him, "Do you think that Jim was adopted?" He's like, no, he's not adopted. I'm like, okay. He goes, "Why don't I take a DNA test and clear this up?" Okay. So he submits a DNA test. I managed it. Him and I both could look at it. So I was anxiously waiting, and I was at work, and I opened it, and I could not believe my eyes when I saw that he was not matching me at all. And I was kind of just ignoring all the signs. I'd already seen that there was nobody in the match list that had their last name or their any of their family names. I didn't have anybody with those names in my match list. I couldn't believe it. But when he came back that he wasn't related, like we weren't on each other's list, we both were devastated. That it hurt. It hurt my heart. Because he was a wonderful guy.
Did you still think maybe Jim was adopted? Or at that point, did you accept the results for what they were?
I think I pretty much knew then that that was not my family. And it was hard for both of us. Rick was he's a very sensitive, loving guy, and he scooped us up. We even started calling him Uncle Dad, because we didn't have his brother in our life. He wasn't into it. So he said to us one day, "Well, if Jim doesn't want you, can I have you?" And we said, "Well, yeah." So it was really hard when that came out. And he said, "Well, whatever, we're still family. I still love you." We kind of just moved on. We made sure our relationship didn't change, and it didn't, and it still to this day has not changed.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's a good guy. But then I had this other problem of, well, who the heck is my dad?
Did you talk to your mom at this point?
Yeah, I did. Mom, she's tough. She's a tough one. If you think about what she did back in the late 60s, going back and forth to Maine by herself, working, she was kind of like a little bit of a rebel. She always told me, "Oh, I used to date everybody. I date everybody." It didn't matter their age, their race. And she raised my brother and I to be very open and treat everybody the same. And so she was always open about her past. I did approach her, and it was difficult because she's just a hard person to talk to about stuff like that. Anything that's like more personal to her, that generation, they like to keep everything inside. So I told her that Jim was not our father, and her eyes got real big, and she's like, "What?" And I said, no, then I explained the test to her, and she had actually taken a test as well. So I was able to separate all my matches and everything. And I knew the ethnicity, what was hers and what wasn't. So she had taken the test. So I tried to ease the blow. And can you think of somebody that you might have dated back then that would be our dad? She said, well, there's only one other person it could be. And his name was, and she gave this name. And when I heard the name, I thought, well, he's not Italian.
Okay.
And,
so kind of rolled that out.
Yeah. I said, was he Italian? And she said, no, he was Irish. He was like full Irish. I said, then he's not our dad. By then she was done with the conversation. She's like, well, then you don't need to know. I don't need to know. I said, well, that sucks. And she's like, what sucks? I said that I'm 45 years old and I don't know who my father is. And she says, oh, well, she was done. She was not talking about it anymore. I was on my own. And my brother, again, he kind of kept to himself with it. He didn't have any interest in finding out. He even said, well, Jim's my father. I don't know who your father is, but he's my father. I said it.
So he was thinking it might have been one of those rare twins from different fathers.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. I said as much of a cool thing it would be to be a medical anomaly, I just don't think that's the case. So he didn't want to admit it. And he was in law enforcement and had no interest in helping me do anything. I was on my own. He didn't want to rock the boat with mom anymore. And all right, I guess I'm doing this myself. So back to the DNA test. I had a high match, a close-ish match that was an Italian name. And that person had a very small tree. And I could see like up to his grandparents or something. Everybody's Italian in that family. So I reached out to that person because what I figured out with that person, let's say his name was John. That person, my match named John, I knew based on the centimorgans that whoever my father was a first cousin to him. So I reached out because I wanted to talk to him about who are your male first cousins? I'm trying to find my biological father. And he didn't really want to help. He just had done the test to help someone else in his family. So he really wasn't too helpful. So I took his small tree and I just started researching it. And for some reason, his mother's parents I was drawn to them. And even more so when I looked at one of the death records, and that family had been like buried in West Palm Beach, Florida, which is where I always knew I was conceived. So I thought I might be on the right track. And I'm thinking I'm going to keep looking into this family. So started doing that. And I kept coming across this one woman that had family trees on all different sites. I contacted her and I started explaining the situation, and she turned out to be a cousin of John as well. So she would have been in that same generation of that family. And I said, can you help me with your male cousins, or do you have any brothers? We started discussing all this, and she said, well, I do have two brothers. One, she kind of explained that one of her brothers had never even had a girlfriend. He had lived with his mother his whole life, and she said, it's probably not him, but I do have this other brother. His name is Billy, and he would have been about the same age as my mom, and their family all lived in that same city that my mom had gone back and forth to for 6 years. Her relationship with Billy wasn't great, but she was intrigued, and she's like, I want to help you figure this out. And so she asked me to send her some pictures of my brother and I and my mom, and she took all this information, and I believe she sent her husband over to talk to Billy. She didn't get along with her brother. Took all this information over to Billy, and Billy was, okay, I have kids, and he saw the pictures, and he was willing to do a DNA test.
How long did it take from when your mom said, you're on your own, to you have potentially identified Billy as your biological father?
It wasn't too long. It was a couple of months.
How are you feeling like you're so close to getting that confirmation? How are you feeling at that point?
Well, it turns out that Billy was kind of like a local celebrity in that area. I was able to find all kinds of stuff online, YouTube. He was a musician. He sang. He had been in some movies. He had multiple bands over the years, and I had access to newspapers.com. At one point, I found so much stuff. I saw pictures of him and his brother, and I have to tell you, when I saw a picture of his brother, it was like a profile picture, and I don't know if you can see, I have like this little like line on my nose, but I saw this newspaper clipping of his brother. It was just a random thing. He was getting a haircut. He was a hippie, and they just did this little article on him getting his haircut, and there was like this profile shot, and he had my nose. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's my nose. But I thought, maybe I'm just trying to see it. And he had my hair. I have really dark hair. His hair was about this long, and it was dark, curly, and he had this little dimple in his nose. I thought, wow, nobody in my family has that. And my brother's nose is slightly different, so it was kind of funny. I was like, And then I just kept looking at pictures of Billy going, is he my dad? And younger pictures of him, I was like, whoa. And again, I'm thinking, I'm just trying to see it. I'm trying to see that there's similarities. So I tried not to get my hopes up, and I had asked his sister, if this comes back that he's not, will you help me try to figure it out? She says, oh yeah, we've got she had a big family. We got cousin so-and-so and cousin so-and-so. Oh, it might be him. He was a ladies' man. And she was going to help me figure out who to approach next. A couple weeks later, I was getting ready to go to work, and I checked my email. It said the results were in. I'm looking at it on my phone, and it said, Billy or William is your father. And it just like said that. And I was blown away that I actually found him that quickly. Like, I found him on my own. And the fact that that family name, I just, for some reason, when I had seen that first tree, it was a very small tree. It only went up to like maybe grandparents or great-grandparents. And I just gravitated towards that family. And then finding the sister, she was all over the internet with different trees, and contacting her and her actually responding to me. It just was crazy that it just boom, boom, boom. It came back, and he was the person.
Wow. I mean, it's incredible, right? Because it really, and I say this all the time, but it really is some parts hard work and being a great detective, and then also a little bit of luck. Like, you didn't go down the wrong path at first. You picked the right one.
Yes.
So what happens next?
So she claimed that she couldn't hear very well, so all we did was communicate through email. And I said, can I please call you? I got the results. Can I call you? And she said, no, just email me. So I emailed her. I said, well, say hello to your new niece. She was like, oh my gosh. She asked me again, send me all this information so that I can show him that you're his daughter. So I sent it to her. She and her husband went to talk to him, and she came back and told me that he was shocked and would welcome a phone call from me. She was given the okay to give me his phone number, and this was like on a Friday that she came back and said, I got the results on a Thursday. She talked to him on a Friday. I waited till Saturday morning, and I called him. That was crazy.
Yeah, take me through that. Like, you waited a little bit, but how was
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on turbotax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.
Conversation.
So I got up the nerve to call him. He picked up, and the first thing I noticed was his voice was so, like, cool. He just sounded like a cool guy. He's like, well, I guess you're my daughter. What do you want to know? He was so nice. He just started telling me about his life, about his career. I asked him, like, are you married? Do you have other kids? He was a lifelong bachelor. He actually had no kids that he knew of. And he was married for a very short time to a woman that's actually like 3 years older than me. And that was it. Other than that, he was a lifelong bachelor, musician, entertainer. He was big into Dixieland jazz. He played in New Orleans for many years. He was pretty successful at that. He made a good career out of it, and people knew his name, and he enjoyed his life. And he even said, I would have made a terrible dad. I was always traveling, and, and I'm like, I don't think so. I think you can't really say how good of a dad you would have been since you didn't know, and who knows, you would have made it work. But that's neither here nor there.
Did he remember your mother?
So that was difficult because I think he was a lot like she was, in that they were just la la la, just dating everybody. And, he saw her picture and he was just kind of like, maybe. And I told him, she would have been either a maid at some hotel or a waitress. Those are the things that she did as jobs. And that kind of rang a bell for him. He's like, well, I do remember dating a waitress, and I was a security guard at the time. And he's like, I think that's when I knew her. And then at one point he even said, I think I had coffee with her and I noticed she was pregnant. And I remember thinking, is that my kid? And we didn't talk about it. We just kind of had coffee together. But she had been dating all these different people, and apparently he had been too.
So it wasn't necessarily like a boyfriend-girlfriend kind of relationship, so it was easy to dismiss.
Kind of like a fling.
Yeah.
He just called it an affair, a fling.
Okay. So once you found him, did you go back to your mom and brother and tell them?
So I'll start with Mom. I decided not to tell her right away because she had made it very clear she was not interested in talking about it. And at one point, I think I asked her, well, if I ever find him, do you want me to let you know? No. Okay. I can't imagine not knowing who fathered my children, but that's just how she was. And I've heard that on some of the other stories that you've had, that the mother's just kind of like, I'm good.
They just kind of check out. They push it down. I mean, I think that denial, and it doesn't sound like your mom was ashamed of her past, but I think sometimes that factors in.
I think it does too. And we even talked about that, and she talked about how much fun she had. And she's like, I have no regrets. And I even tried to tell her, I have no judgment whatsoever. Whatever you did, I don't care. I want to know who my dad is. She's like, well, good. I'm glad you don't judge me because I don't regret anything. She had like this attitude. I'm like, okay, but I sure wish you'd give me a little more to go on. But she just got mad at me, and it was awful. So I did not tell her. Now, my brother, he was still like, I don't care what you find out, whatever. Doesn't concern me. I have no interest. But obviously, when I found out who our father was, I said, I found him. He's like, really? Yeah. Do you want to know anything about him? I don't know. Not really. Okay. So he's kind of a macho guy. If he was interested, he wasn't about to let me know that. So Billy gathered up a bunch of pictures and things, and he sent me a little package, and it was kind of cute. He had doubles of everything. He had 2 of everything. And I started looking at these photos, and there was one or two that when he was younger that I thought, oh my gosh, my brother looks so much like him. It's crazy. I didn't really look like him a lot. I had his brother's nose, and I had dark curly Italian hair. I remember texting my brother, and I said, can I send you a couple pictures? Meaning I was going to take a picture with my phone and text it to him. Can I send you some? He's like, yeah, I guess. So I sent it to him, and he did not respond, except for I think he might have said, oh, wow. I was like, yeah, oh, wow. And he really did not comment further. Well, later on that day or the next day, he said, do you have a picture of Jim when he was in high school? So Jim, the one we thought was our dad. I said, I think so. So I dug around and I found a young picture of young Jim, and I sent it to him. I had no idea what he was doing with it. Well, a couple days later, he called me or texted me, and he said, so I took a picture of Jim and Billy to work, and I asked all my coworkers, who do I look like? Which one? They all said Billy. And he was like, I don't know if I can swear on here, but he said, oh, the F word. And yeah. I just kind of laughed. I'm like, well, you look a lot like him. He said, okay, I guess he's my father too. And then I don't know how much later, it was a couple weeks, he said, I want to do a DNA test as well. Okay. So we got that going, and I was upset thinking, well, what if he comes back and he's just my half brother? That would be crazy. And I remember thinking how upset I was going to be if that actually did happen, but it didn't. Came back, Billy's your father. And so I told him that, and he's like, wow, okay. So he started learning a little bit about him. Billy and I talked all the time. The first conversation I had with him that Saturday morning was about 45 minutes. And I hung up the phone and I thought, wow, he's really cool. And I love his voice. And he was so nice to talk to. He was just easy to talk to. And he was just like, oh, okay, this happened. Oh, I guess I have kids. It didn't bother him at all. Yeah. And his brother was like, I have a niece and a nephew. Yay.
So you're talking all the time. Do you make plans to meet in person?
Definitely. So I was, in Maine. He's in Florida. He had already said he doesn't have a lot of money. He can't really travel. I said, that's all right. I'll figure something out. But right about that time, he was getting set up to have some pretty serious heart surgery. So we had to wait till that happened. So that was over the course of like 2 or 3 months. He almost actually died during the surgery. I remember his sister was keeping me informed, his sister and brother, like letting me know, like, he's not doing good. You better call him in the hospital. And I remember thinking, God, do not do that to me. Like, I haven't even met him yet. I just found him. Please don't die. And he made it through. He had some recovery, and then I planned a trip down there. And yeah, I was super excited. He was so cute. He's like, I made a list of all the things that we can do and all the places I want to show you. And sure enough, I fly down there. He meets me at the baggage claim, and it was just really cool. He gave me a big hug. He said, you want to go to lunch? He takes me to lunch. And I remember taking our first selfie together, and that was amazing to me to finally have, like, this is my biological father, and he's so cool. And we had a nice visit. I didn't stay with him. I stayed in a hotel, and he picked me up every day, and we went and did all his things he wanted to do. And I met a ton of his friends. I got to hear him play. He plays the trumpet. I got to hear him play, and it was just really fun. At the time, he was in his late 70s, and I thought, this guy is still going. He'd call me up and say, I wanted to call you now because I'm going out with my friends, and I'll be out late. And I'm like, wow, he's got like a more social life than I do. And yeah, it was pretty neat. So I met him, and he totally looked like the, Italian guy with the shirt unbuttoned and the jewelry and the nice shoes and flirting with everybody. Yeah, he was pretty cool. It was fun. We connected really well right out the gate. He would sometimes ask, about my brother. Does he know about me? Do you think he wants to meet me? And I didn't want to hurt his feelings, but I would say, he's getting there, he's warming up to the idea. He had to come to that on his own time. And he finally did. My brother ended up going down there. They met. I have one picture of the two of them together. And I ended up going down like a second time. I brought my two sons with me, so they got to meet their grandfather. That was really nice. That was really fun. My brother has one child, and I have two, so he has 3 grandchildren. He never did meet my brother's daughter. So, yeah, we had a relationship for a few years, and he passed away in 2020. So it was about 4 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how did you navigate that?
I went from being so grateful for what I did have and what we were able to form between us. I went from that to being, this really bites. I didn't meet him until he was an old man, and I didn't have enough time. I went back and forth with those. I didn't want to be ungrateful for what I had because I'd seen so many DNA stories, the rejection and everything, and I did not have the rejection. So I was so thankful for what I had, and that I had met him and his siblings and some cousins, and I still have contact with a lot of his family. His sister won't talk to me. I don't know why. She just kind of got weird about the whole thing. But I will add, the sister, she also had a set of twins. She had twin daughters, and they were born like 8 months before we were. So that was kind of neat. And I met one of them, and we looked a lot alike. So it was fun to see family that you look like, because I only knew half of my family.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm so glad that you did find him before he passed, because I'm sure you hear a lot of those stories too of
I always feel so bad.
Yeah, but I think it's important to acknowledge like both things, right? Like it's okay to be disappointed and however you feel about the lost time. Mm-hmm. Have you found a way to make peace with that?
I do think about him a lot, and I have so many wonderful pictures of him. I have 2 movies that he was in that was kind of fun to watch that when he was younger. And I actually have contact with his best friend. So every now and then his best friend and I will talk. His brother had passed away like 2 months before he did. So I don't have anybody in that family anymore because his sister won't talk to me, and her daughters, they just got really weird about my reasons for finding the family, and I don't know. So I just had to kind of let that go,
Were they concerned that you were after money or something like that? Or?
I think so. Money, property. And it's like, he didn't have hardly anything, and I don't care. That wasn't it at all. And I wasn't going to try to defend myself constantly. It's like, okay, think what you want to think, but I got what I need out of it. And met him. I know his whole family line. His sister was an amazing genealogist. She had actually gone to Italy and gone to all the places. She'd gotten Italian records translated and things. So she had a really, really good family tree already. And I'm thankful for that. I have a lot of the family history. There's so many interesting families, like my father's cousin was an inventor. His grandparents were inventors. His mother actually held the patent for inline skates for 25 years. She invented those. Yeah, she had the patent for that, but she could never get anybody to build them. So eventually the patent ran out and someone else got credit for it. So it was a little tidbit about her that was kind of neat. She had a couple of sisters that were Rockettes. They were models. They were all just beautiful women and had interest. There's a lot of interesting family stories. One of my father's cousins was a beauty queen in Connecticut. His father was a championship boxer. Just a lot of neat stuff to find out. and the pictures are great. And so I am very thankful for what I got. I got to meet him. I know I'm very lucky in that sense. And I don't know what else I could ask for, really, at this point.
Have you gotten in touch with any of the Italian side, like culturally? A lot of people will start cooking recipes or they go and visit.
Oh my gosh. Well, guess who latched onto that? My brother. He,
the resistant one.
Yes. He is now fluent in Italian. He is actually in Italy right now. He's been to Italy multiple times. I had contact with a distant cousin. We're still not sure exactly where our lines meet, but she's on like a couple of different DNA sites and she matches me. And her name is Lena, and she lives in the town that a lot of our family was from. And so my brother had asked, hey, do you have contact with anybody that's in Italy? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. So they connected. He went over there. He met her family, like her husband and 2 sons. And while he was doing that, he sent me a picture they took a selfie of him and the family. And for a minute, I couldn't figure out which one was him. Her 2 sons and my brother looked so much alike that it took me a minute or 2 to go, which one is my brother?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so funny that he is the one that's like all about it.
Yeah, he's all about it now. And he always had people asking him if he was Italian or Greek. He's very Italian looking. And he hated when people ask him that. And now he makes his own pasta. He makes his own sauce. He has an Italian tutor. And, oh yeah, he's embraced it.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Is your mother still alive?
My mother's still alive. I was in the car with her one day, taking her to her sister's memorial, and it was just the 2 of us. And I said, so I did end up finding out who our father was. And before I even got it out of my mouth, she said, I'm not interested. She didn't want to know. Okay, we'll shut that conversation down. So she knows that Jim is not our father and that it is someone else, but when she talks to people, she will talk about Jim being our dad. She'll say, my brother looks so much like Jim, and I don't know why you're not as tall as he was. Jim was like 6'4", and my brother was like 5'9", and my mom would say, I don't know why you're not as tall as he is. You got the genes. And this is way after we knew that that's not our dad and that she was told that he was not our dad. I think that she was in love with Jim, and that was like the love of her life. And the fact that she had his kids was like the only thing she had of him. And when I crushed that dream, she just couldn't handle it. It just not something she wanted to believe. And it was like taking that last thing away from her that she had of him. Because she did have a relationship with him. They had a longish relationship. But she just figured her dates wrong. I think she really did think that he was our father and that she just, messed up the dates or something. She always said we were born early. Oh, you were due in October, but we were born in August. It's like, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. As I'm talking to you now, you really seem like you are okay with it, or that you're at peace with it. And if I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. How did you get to this place?
Honestly, that short period of time that I didn't know who my father was scary to me and very uncomfortable. So just being able to figure out who it was, it settled that part of me. And I just said, whatever I get out of it will be a bonus. And I got way more than I ever really thought or expected. And that's sort of why I'm okay with it. I actually got it's his signature with a little trumpet on the bottom. I can't get it to, now it's upside down, but his signature, and then there's a little trumpet that he used to draw on the end of it. And
so
I got that.
Listening, Alissa has she has a tattoo with his signature and a trumpet.
Yeah. And that's my little dedication to him.
Yeah.
Because what we did have for 4 years, almost to the day, was really special to me. And I'm really glad I got to meet him. I'm bummed that he passed away, in my eyes, too soon. But, I still have a lot of memories. I have pictures. I have all kinds of stuff. I got almost all his belongings. I have his ashes. His best friend took an old trumpet of his and put his ashes in it and sealed it and sent it to me. So I have his ashes.
That's really special.
Yeah. My mom had such a different attitude about it. My brother had such a different attitude about it. And I just had to come to terms with everybody handles it differently. And I just need to worry about myself. I got my truth out of it, which was the most important thing to me. Like I said, that period of time that I didn't know was awful. It was just awful. When I first met Billy, I said, I've never had a dad on my birth certificate. Would you be willing to be put on that? And he said, yeah, in a heartbeat. Whatever I have to do, I'll do it. Ancestry DNA or those website DNA is not like a legal DNA test that could be used in court. I said, well, we need to do like a legal DNA test so that we have that documented like that. And so we all did it and got the results. And of course it was, 99.999, probability. And so I had what was considered basically the only DNA test that would be used in court. So now that I had that, I knew that I could probably get my birth certificate fixed. And it turned out to be a blessing that my stepdad was never actually my adopted father. Because had that been the case, then I probably would not have been able to change the birth certificate, especially like getting him involved. Yeah. But it was never, their birth certificate was never changed. So there was nobody listed. And so after he passed away, it was actually pretty easy. I submitted the paperwork. There was some forms to fill out. I had my brother do the same. We got them notarized, sent it to the courts, and they sent us new birth certificates. Both of us have him on our birth certificate now.
How incredible that little side story you told at the beginning of your stepfather not legally adopting you. It ended up working out. Like, that's incredible. Mm-hmm. It goes back to that hard work and a little bit of luck, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What advice do you have for a parent who might be keeping a DNA surprise from their child?
I think that a parent that has a DNA surprise or a secret should share that with that child as soon as they think that child could handle it, and even possibly set up counseling before they drop that. I have a friend that had a child, and she wasn't with the child's father, but she married soon after that, and they raised the child with her thinking that her husband was the father. And I always told her right from the beginning, and she knew my whole story, I always said to her, please don't keep that a secret. Please tell her, before she's a teenager. And she went to counseling about it, to talk to somebody about when would be a good time to tell their daughter. And they ended up telling her, and it went really well. It was upsetting, of course, in the beginning, but it went really well. And I just remember saying to her, I'm really glad you did that, because I know it was hard, but we need to know. I was that kid once. I didn't have a dad. I didn't know him. Parents should really put their child first and realize that they need to know the truth for so many reasons I shouldn't even have to list, that although it's a hard conversation, they just need to do it. The child deserves to have their truth known.
What advice do you have for someone who just uncovered a DNA surprise?
Well, I know that I couldn't breathe for a few minutes, so I say breathe and take it slow, and just as much as you can handle. You may have to put it on the back burner for a little while until it sinks in or you figure out your next move, but you deserve to know the truth. So if that's what you seek, you shouldn't let anybody else's feelings get in the way, because I know I felt really whole finally when I found out everything. People deserve to know who their biological parents are, whether you're adopted or whatever the scenario is. It's a feeling you can't describe. I remember asking a friend of mine growing up, I'm like, you have your dad, try to imagine not knowing him. Try to imagine it. And she would say, I can't imagine not knowing my father. So, well, that's how I feel. It's a weird feeling. It's not a hurtful feeling. It's just an empty feeling.
Alissa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. I loved hearing your outlook and your journey. I hope that you make it over to Italy, and I wish you the absolute best.
Oh, thank you. There is a plan for my brother and I to go to Italy together in 2 years. So, yeah, we're planning to do that for sure. And I can't wait to see where my family is from.
Thanks again to Alissa for sharing her story. If you have a DNA surprise that you'd like to share, please submit your story at dnasurprises.com. And remember, for early access to ad-free episodes, join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/DNA Surprises. Until next time. This episode of DNA Surprises was hosted, produced, and edited by me, Alexis Auersalt. It was mixed and mastered by Josh Auersalt of Siren Recording Studios.